Okay, we are back. So I'm going to try to do this one in just two videos because it's a shorter chapter. So this SMCRA, first thing it does is it establishes environmental standards for all mines, and all of any operating mine has to follow the standards set forth in the statute. Um, After the mine close, they have to achieve the standards set forth in the act when they are reclaiming this mine land, right? Turning it back to usable land after the mining has been completed. There's blasting standards. Some areas, surface mining is actually prohibited. Um, and that's kind of so they set those standards. I'm not going to like talk about the specific standards because they change. They're published in the CFR. The other thing that the SMCRA does is create a permitting requirement for surface mining. Um, so, the applications have to describe what the site looked like before the mining, so the pre-mining environmental conditions, what's supposed to be mined, what's their proposal for reclamation, how and whether it will meet the performance standards, and then how it could be used after reclamation is complete. And if you want to look at what one of those permit applications looks like, you can go to 13.1, and this is an example of what an application looks like in Kentucky. And again, as a paralegal, if you're working for a company that does mining or is proposing doing mining, this is something that you would be working on too, helping fill out these forms, permits for mining, the permit forms for mining. Um, the other thing that One of the other things that the SMCRA requires is public participation. So these permits, there would be a notice requirement that, if a permit is requested, it would be published and there'd be an opportunity for public comment. Um, any maps of mining areas have to be published. So there's public participation in the permitting process, any revision of permits, if there's any violations, any enforcement proceedings, the public has to be notified of that. Also, the statute provides for citizen suits. So if a citizen group or a person sees a violation or thinks there is a violation of the SMCRA, they can file a suit on their own behalf. Another part, if you are applying to mine land, mining companies have to post a bond to cover the cost of repairing the site after their mining operations are complete. So that bond is not released until the land is fully put back into, spick and span condition. So things they have to do is like they have to slope it to the original contour, right? So if you have to fill in and make it look like it did before, and they may add land to support what they call higher and better uses that don't pose any threat to water quality, or water quantity, or any specific use. If you want, there's different states that have, on page 337 we have the Colorado rules on hard rock mining reclamation. So they can give land previously mined, and the exchanges have to be approved. So that is important. The government regulators, either the OSM or if there's a state agency that is overseeing it, they have the right to inspect any mining, any mines, any mining operations, to impose penalties on companies that violate the act, or any state law that regulates the same kind of thing. These inspections, they have to be inspected once every quarter. They don't have to give the mines advance notice. They can issue notice of violations, and they have a certain amount of time to correct it. If not, then there's fines, or kind of a cease and desist that they can't mine there anymore. So the other thing that the SMCRA does is it establishes a fund. So similar to CERCLA, right, the Superfund, they have this abandoned mine lands fund that is funded by these fees, right? The royalties, the leasing fees, the permitting fees that the mining companies pay to the government. Part of a percentage of that goes to this abandoned mine lands fund. Okay, so that for these abandoned land mines, then the states are given money to clean up these sites and reclaim that land. Some of the money also goes to emergencies. So if there is a cave in or um, something mine related that needs to be cleaned up pretty quickly, they can use this abandoned mine lands fund. It also may give an opportunity. States may choose to use some of this fund to provide insurance for homeowners who might have uh, who, who might undergo some damage to their property, like with a sinkhole or the subsidence stuff where the land kind of caves in a little bit. So that is the abandoned mine land funds. Other laws that deal with mining. So it's not just the mining law, right? So if it's a federal agency who is doing something mine related, then the NEPA applies, right? And then you might have to file an environmental impact statement to determine whether or not what the environmental impact is. The Clean Air Act will apply, especially with that smelting, things that might be emitted into the air. If there is a release of a hazardous substance, CERCLA applies. You say I don't have RCRA. RCRA is excluded. Endangered Species Act, which we just talked about last week. So if mining operations may affect the critical habitat of a listed species, that'll kick in. And then there will be state laws, depending on the state. Now, there's also Clean Water Act. So, you might need a permit. So some states kind of match up mining permits with those National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits under the Clean Water Act. So they might match those up. So if you need a permit under the Surface Mining Act and as well as the Clean Water Act. So that's kind of, I guess, it's kind of a hotbed issue right now, Clean Water Act and mining. So one of the ways that areas are mined, they call it mountaintop mining. They explode off the top, they blast off the top of mountains to get some of the coal underneath. Obviously, you have the noise and the vibration, you have the dust. If there's any kinds of ecosystem or animals or flora or fauna living there, you're disrupting that. And then there might be pollution where, this stuff that comes out is dumped, right? If it is a federal agency performing that, you have to perform an EIS. And you might also have to get one of these, they call those dredge and fill permits from the Army Corps under the Clean Water Act. So yeah, some environmental groups like to claim that these permits, if you give a permit, under the SMRCA, then you might be violating clean water. So you'd have to also get a permit under that for the dredge and fill. oh, this is the NPDES, and yeah, so this whether or not you are required to both get a clean water permit and a mining permit is kind of like up in the air, and it courts are in conflict about that. So it's kind of something that hasn't really been figured out yet. So that's it on mining. We're kind of a little bit in our world. We're a little bit far afield of it, but it is still a pretty large part of our economy and industry of our country. So for the rest of this module, we just have the discussion board and then the presentation assignment for the following week. So be sure, I have it in the overview and in that presentation assignment as well, a link to a Google Sheet where you're going to sign up for a date and a time to give your presentation. And if for some reason what I have down there, I think I have 3 days, 3 options. And if the times don't work for you, just reach out to me via email and give me your availability in that email so that we can schedule a mutually convenient time. And then we have our final the week after that, which, our final test the week after that. So that's it. Reach out to me if you have any questions.